Greetings, folks. David back again with another video pre-recorded. Obviously, I'm not streaming. Um, I've been putting this video off for a little while because I just didn't have enough time to do it. But it's one I really wanted to do, even though I've already talked about the Smile movies that I watched for the past 3 weeks or so. I've seen both of them, just because I don't think I really express to the fullness how I feel about these two movies. Anyway, just for the journal's sake, it's 9:51 p.m. on the 31st of December 2024. Just 2 hours left in this year, and hopefully I'll be streaming at midnight. So hopefully this video won't run too long. I just wanted to get out some final thoughts about these two movies because uh, they really have made kind of an impact on me, and I wanted to just get some closure. I need closure on these two movies, the Smile franchise, as it were, and then move on. I actually have seen another movie at the theater just last night. I'll upload my review of that film. Stay tuned as soon as this one's up. So let me just get into this a little bit. Smile, 2022 film starring Sosie Bacon as Rose Carter. Rose, that's uh, that's our first victim, and then Smile 2, Sky Riley, played by Naomi Scott. Just to give a couple of the stars' names again, I'll probably be referencing these IMDb pages I'm looking at as I go. Let me just make sure I hit the high points this time because I can't. I know I take forever trying to say what I'm saying here, and I don't script these things because I don't think in this case it would actually do any good. I would always remember something else after the fact. So let me just make this video and be done with it, and yeah, that'll be that. I'm gonna repeat myself a lot for the past two videos I made about the Smile movies. I know that, but just for the sake of covering all my bases, I got to repeat some stuff. For instance, I don't do horror a lot, and I think that's part of why um, these movies had kind of the effect on me that they do. I don't know what it was about my curiosity to see Smile because, well, actually, I take that back. I know exactly what it was because I just remembered what it was. I had been slightly curious, but then forgot all about it, like I do a lot of movie trailers. But let me give his name properly this time. I'm typing it in YouTube right now. The Brutality of Smile. I'm about to make sure I get this YouTuber's name correctly. Done. Yes, and there's the awful face of the entity right there on the screen. It's the second uh, thing that comes up on YouTube. This is uh, Big Will is the YouTube channel's name. This video was put up a year ago, 3.5 million views. The awful entity, the trauma entity's face being on the uh, thumbnail is what kind of took me back a couple of years ago. It's been since I watched this, or maybe not that long, but a good long while. And listening to his little 15-minute video is what really sent me over the edge with, like, you know what? That sounds like a really interesting premise. The way that this curse is transferred from one person to another, and unfortunately, he went into the full spoilers and stuff. I think, don't you know what? Don't quote me on that. Maybe I'm wrong, but maybe he didn't go into it, but maybe stopped just shy of that. I don't know. Anyway, it was his video that really, and he has a whole series of the brutality of, and he'll go into the brutality of whatever horror movie's title. You know what? Let me go ahead and click on this, and I'll read off some of his. The brutality of Contracted. The Brutality of Smile 2 4 weeks ago. The Brutality of the Substance. I do want to see that one because of something I've heard about it. Good things. The Brutality of Terrifier 3. I'm not going to watch that one. The Brutality of. He does horror movies, basically. And for whatever reason, maybe I had looked up the Smile trailers. I don't know why, but it was recommended to me, and I watched it, and I'm like, you know what? I was just curious. I just became very curious about this movie, and so that's what put me over the edge to want to watch it, especially after a sequel came out, which looked like it was pretty intense, also. And having viewed both movies now, I can tell you they absolutely are, especially Smile 2. So that's how it all began. That's why I wanted to see these movies. Me being somebody who doesn't regularly watch horror movies, I just don't. It's not something I'm naturally inclined to do, which means this whole experience has been unnatural. Yeah, for me, anyways. But I'll tell you what, I got a real thrill out of watching both of these movies, particularly Smile 2 at the theater, even before I saw Smile 1, which I watched in the truck. I'm a over the road truck driver by trade. And it just, it was just something else. And again, some more background on why I even watched these two movies. I would like to make a movie one day. It's my goal to eventually be a filmmaker. And one film I know I want to make, it's been building up in my mind for a long time, is, well, it's a thriller, not really a horror, but I can't explain it otherwise but to say that there are certain sequences or elements to it that cross the line over into horror. It's not some Terrifier 3 gore thing. No, 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 no. It's something a little bit more like what I saw in Smile that I want to do one day. Only not really a demonic curse type thing, but the kind of intensity and uh, mental trip that those movies send the viewer on, especially Smile 2. Even though I've got some gripes against that movie, and I'll get into that as we go. And so those are the two reasons. One, I was curious. Two, I need to see how this is done so that I'll know when the time comes how to do what I want to do. I'm basically studying film and appreciating film. It's just that simple. And I was so curious about comparing these things, engaging these things, that I went ahead and watched Nosferatu. I watched it the other night at the movies, and again, that's the review that I'm going to put up right after this video. And I just wanted to compare it. Okay, this is another horror movie, and I knew going in that this isn't going to be like Smile or Smile 2 watching Nosferatu, because of a pre-existing kind of bias that I had in my mind about a Count Dracula, Count Orlok tale, Nosferatu, the undead. Um, just because of the way, something about it that already existed in my mind, as far as the Smile movies are completely, the antagonist is completely in the mind of the victim, and whereas in Nosferatu, uh, Count Orlok is a person who already exists, even though he is essentially demonic. He is a man, extremely old, but it's just not the same thing. And I was right about that as far as my movie viewing experience that I had, because I was not scared watching Nosferatu the way that I was when I was watching these two Smile films, both of them, but particularly Smile 2. And again, it's a shame I didn't see the first Smile movie in the theater, because it would have been a great time at the movie theater. And I was thinking about why that is earlier. Where was I when I was thinking about this? And I got to thinking, it's not the same as a live performance. Obviously, this is a movie, but being in the theater with the full, you're in a big dark room, maybe some other people, if you're lucky, watching this film with you and enjoying it. I realize it's because there is no pause button. When the moments come, it's like there's no stopping this. You just gotta soak it in, suck it up, Buttercup. Whatever is is happening. And I thought, especially watching a horror movie like the Smile movies, that's definitely a part of it, isn't it? It's like we're here, we're doing this, we're going on this journey, experiencing this adventure, transpiring, unfolding on the screen as we go. But back to what I was saying about the comparison between those two movies and Nosferatu. It was a beautifully done film, Nosferatu. But as far as how scary it was and the horror elements, I was not filled with this. I mean, deep, abiding sense of dread, like on the edge of my seat, the way I was in different moments of the Smile movies. I just wasn't. And to me, it speaks to a just a whole different ball game, a whole different style uh, of horror tale of scary movies. And it just, I never thought I'd praise horror movies in my life, but I kind of want to do that for the two Smile movies, even though I'm going to voice my gripes and complaints along the way in this video. Also, it's just, it was an experience, particularly Smile 2, but also Smile 1 as well. So let me let me just add that to all the stuff I already said in my review of Smile 2 and then Smile 1. Even though, for whatever reason, Rumble now has them backwards. I uploaded them as I saw them, Smile 2 and then Smile 1, but for whatever reason, they're in they're in a proper order. It's just not the order that I saw them in and uploaded. Anyways, that's weird the way Rumble did that. One day these will be on YouTube, these videos, but it's just strange. Well, I want stuff to show in the order that I uploaded it and submitted it to the internet. But it doesn't matter, I guess. What more can I say? Uh, Let me just talk about some of the stuff that I just remember and I really appreciate. Let me talk about the Joel scene. The way the second movie opened, I was bummed out at first that, well, I will take that back as I was watching it again because I didn't see Smile. I saw Smile 2 first. I saw the second movie first, which in a way it made it even better somehow. I can't really even explain that, but the way Joel, because I saw from clips online who this Joel person was, former police officer. He had been involved romantically with Rose at one time, but then things didn't work out, and she was affianced to marry, what is that guy's name? Who he got to the point where he couldn't deal with her mental problems that were taking over their lives. Jesse T. Usher played Trevor. Trevor was her fiance. Okay. Now at the beginning of Smile 2, that whole thing with Joel, I was like, I didn't appreciate it so much as far as the technical filmmaking aspect of it at first. I only realized how great that opening scene was as I thought about it more, because in the moment I was just completely sucked in by it, which is great. That is great movie making. When he glanced to his left and it was a Rose, I didn't realize it was Rose at that moment, but that's Rose. He was on fire. He didn't even stop. He just kept walking because of the hallucinations from the entity. He wasn't letting him get to him. He was going to carry out his mission of trying to pass the curse onto these. They sound like Puerto Rican drug dealers who he knew from his being a cop and being privy to criminal cases and records. They had killed somebody, so it's like he's going to be free of the curse by inflicting let the entity, the demon, float around the population of gangbangers and drug dealers. He went out of his way in this sort of noble effort, but it didn't turn out so well, did it? The gunfight ended with both of those guys being dead and him screaming, "Oh, there's nobody left to pass to. What am I going? There's nobody left." And then when the guy was there, let me get his name right again. Uh, it was Come on now. I don't like the way this is displayed. It's not showing him on the. Oh, there he is. Lucas Gage played Lewis. He was the small-time drug dealer who gave Rose her painkiller drugs and who knows what else to that character. Um, I really should write stuff down. Man, I couldn't believe it. I was thinking about it afterwards and I was thinking, did they do all that in one shot? And I was like, no, no, because there's a point where you see Joel running. He jumps out the window after he kicks the AC unit out. I'm like, no, there had to have been a break there. And then it was two things. The rest of it is it picks up with him looking through the bad guys, the drug dealers who showed up after everything, after he had passed the entity on to Lewis, because Lewis was there and must have realized all that had happened. So he actually witnessed the murder, even though maybe was he passed out? I was thinking exactly how does the curse work? If he was kind of passed out on the table, did it really take? Did the curse really pass on to him? Of course, in the movie, you know that it did, but I'm thinking Joel didn't have to ask him, did you see that? Did you see the way I shot these guys? Good. No, it was just so intense, and I was just so sucked in by that opening sequence. It was amazing to me. This Smile 2 has like some. I'll get into another sequence that's just so memorable in this movie. It's like top 10 most intense things I've ever seen in a movie before. I kid you not. Maybe you're thinking, well, David, you should watch more movies. You won't be so impressed by this stuff. But man, it was something else. It was something else. It gave me the heebie-jeebies. But when I checked back again, it was when you can watch that clip online. The opening scene, somebody has it on YouTube. I think it's actual film, whatnot. It was one scene, uninterrupted. And I'm thinking there's some behind the scene things you can actually watch that I think explain how they must have. The cameraman had to be inside of that whole opening scene with Joel and the shootout with the two when he wanted to kill the one brother in front of the other one so the other one would have the curse. But instead, he started shooting at him, and then he shot back, and he died. Blah blah blah. I'm like, the cameraman must have been walking around in that last room as Joel was trying to get away from the drug dealers, and they must have, without shaking it too much or something, just so professionally, man, it's just unbelievable. They must have slipped it onto a boom or something that was attached to the car. I haven't watched the behind the scenes stuff, but I saw the one thing of on the thumbnail that starts to play just as you scroll over it, a car coming away from that window of that house. They must have like slipped it, like locked it in like 3 seconds, slipped it on, and then they film Joel jumping out of that window. It was all one scene from the time Joel gets out of his car all the way through all the dialogue, the shooting, the emotional scene of Joel. I'm like, dude, if I had just seen one strong tear out of what's the actor's name? I got to get his name right. Apparently, he's in a lot of horror. Kyle Gallner played Joel. I'm like, this guy is good because he had to go from determined to hesitant to scared to confused and angry again. I realized I didn't realize anybody was here, and he realized that he passed it on. Then he's all remorseful and sad, like this wasn't meant for you. And you're thinking, you have to know how this curse works to understand how serious a moment that was for him and how he didn't mean to inflict this guy. He didn't mean to do this to Lewis, but he realized like what he had done is like, I messed this whole thing up. He killed a couple of drug dealers, but it's like he knows what this man's gonna have to go through now, and that's gonna kill him. And so he says sorry. And I'm thinking, this is unbelievable. This is nuts. This is completely nuts. I'm thinking he's getting all emotional. I've watched that scene like dozens of times now. I'm like, if this guy had, if even one tear like shot down of his, I'm like, you just did a whole acting in like a 5 minute thing as he turns and he goes out the door. Like this guy needs some kind of an award for that for that kind of acting, man. It was so good. It's all one scene from the time he gets out of that car, determined to go do what he's planned to do to these guys and be free of the curse, free of the entity, all the way until he gets nailed by a truck. Oh man, Joel was turned into hamburger, and it was so horrible, and it was so morbid, and the sound is so good. And I'm thinking I wasn't eating my popcorn at that point. I was just looking up at the screen like he made it all the way out of there to be hit by this truck. Like, and you're thinking all kind of things if you're going into this cold like me, not used to a lot of horror, didn't even watch the first movie. I'm like, did the entity somehow have something to do with that truck hitting it? All kind of thoughts shoot into your mind, right? Of well, how did this happen? Was this really just horrible luck on his part, on Joel's part, that he went through all that 6 day survivor of the curse? Not much time left. He's going to be offing himself soon because the entity. Somebody said in a comment that maybe the entity in some YouTube video, maybe it's one of the clip where you can watch the whole 5 minute sequence of the movie at the beginning. It's so unbelievable. Somebody said maybe the entity was taking it easy on Joel because it sensed in him somebody willing to actually go through with killing somebody. So he was going to be, the entity was going to be passed off for sure to somebody. And so maybe the interesting theory, for sure. But it's like when Joel got hit, I'm like, it didn't hit me right then how horrible it was. I'm like, this guy cared about Rose. He's a part of this story, you know. He was a main character almost in the first movie, and then he just gets obliterated, turned into hamburger with the blood on the road, shaped like a smile. His foot. I'm thinking, I'm actually getting into it at that point. I'm like, it's so morbid. But I'm thinking they should have had some steam rising off of that blood because it's so cold out in the snow. Well, David, don't go there, man. You're getting too into this. But it's like you see him underneath the truck. It's not a close up or anything. You just think, oh man, this and the sound, those in between noises that they made for this movie of instruments like with warped sounding, it is perfect. It was so good because just like the entity, a demonic thing is, it's like it's not here in the flesh and it's not in hell. It's in between, and so these sound effects are like in between an instrument or a violin or something or a horn. It's like warped. It's like it's perfect. It was so good, and it just fit so well. This stuff. Uh, but something I didn't think of, and I happened to watch Rambo Wrath for Life's um, Matt's review of this film. Of course, he hated it, didn't like it, just like he didn't like the first movie. Hated it too. Uh, but he had a theory. I'm like, you know what? I'm surprised I didn't think of that myself. A way that Joel could have lived on, because when that happened, and I'm watching that movie, Smile 2, and I'm in the theater and I'm just thinking, this is horror. This is straight up horror. There's no escape. Nobody survives. It just starts all over again. And that again, that sound effect when it says "Smile 2" on the road, and then the camera starts to move, and you see the aftermath and what just happened to Joel, his body, his dead body, and the blood. It's like the movie like hits you because you gave a care about this guy. You cared about him, and now he's gone. And it's like with the music, it's like you're traumatized or something. You like forget things all of a sudden, and so then the horror resumes and just gets you again and again. And that's especially what happened in Smile 2. And it got to be annoying, especially at the very end. But I'm going to get to that, my little complaint about that at the end of this video. And I got to keep this under an hour. I just have to. But you can see I can go on and on about this stuff because it's like, I'm not going to say it's groundbreaking or it's changed my life or anything. But as far as movies are concerned, I'm kind of encouraged by the kind of thing that's actually possible. maybe I need to watch more movies. So maybe some of you who watched this, you weren't so impressed, but I'm like, this was something else. Here's the theory that Rambo Raff had about Joel. It's like, why did he have to like kill him? Why couldn't, instead of it passing on to this low level drug dealer guy, Lewis, instead of him being afflicted with the entity, why not have Joel? No. Sorry, Rambo Raff said, why not kill Joel, but have him be someone who was remorseful, not just in the moment that he passed the curse to Lewis, but have him come back in the movie somehow later and try to help Lewis deal with it, and somehow, come to think of it, let me add to Rambo Raff's theory. Maybe he could have used his relief from the entity to find some other bad guys that he would know of, being a detective, a cop. Pretty good. That's a pretty good little plot for a movie. But no, they killed him off, and then the entity just ends up getting into from Lewis to uh, Sky, and now the entity's like, oh man, I got somebody who's famous now. All kind of eyeballs are going to be on her whenever I destroy her. But that was a good theory that Rambo Raff had. I'm like, I'm surprised I didn't have that myself. Think of that as like, it would have been interesting. It would have been compelling to keep him alive, keep his character alive. Joel, don't kill him off with the truck, but have him be so sorry about Lewis, this perfect stranger to him, anyways, uh, having the demon and knowing what's going to happen to him, how it's going to end him, have him come back and try to help Lewis in some way or something like that. I'm like, that would have been good. That would have been an interesting way to do the movie. But instead, and this is what I have to keep, this is what I have to start saying right now, and it'll carry me for the rest of this. It's just another horror movie. Even though I haven't seen very many horror movies, that's all I can think to say about this. It's like, there is no escape. There's no, not even a happy ending, because that ain't gonna happen in a horror movie. There's no, there's no hopefulness. It's like the victim host is going to die, and the horror will resume with another host victim, like a parasite passing from one person to another. And let me go ahead and say this too while I'm thinking about it. The entity. This stuff, this thing is so cleverly done to me, and I just got to say it. It's clever because just like you can watch on the Nature Channel, like what in the world? Have you ever seen one of those worms, those little parasites leave the abdomen of a wasp or something like that? Those videos, like, how long is this worm? That whole thing was in that little um, wasp, stuff like that. I was thinking about that as I was thinking about the parasite, the entity, the trauma entity demon, because I was like, to pass from one thing and then go find another host. It's clever. It is clever, and the way it looks, just the first movie, more practical effects. I think they had like the mask and stuff, but it was more CGI stuff when the thing burst out of the sky, and it was just so horrible. But something I wanted to make sure I said about the entity, the look of it, the actual visage, like this is what it is. This is what this this demon entity in the mind really looks like. Is so clever to me. You know why? Because it's the most gory and awful thing that you could possibly imagine. But with this, the eyes looking at you and the smile, particularly in the second film, more so than the first, because the first one was just when the mirage or whatever of Rose's mother tore the disguise away and it revealed the entity and all of its gory glory. It looked pretty bad. but it was still just two eyes and a big old smile, an endless smile, all those rows of teeth, like this thing has consumed and went into so many people from person to person, and just eaten them all up in their minds and destroyed them. It's just like an endless smile. But in the second one in particular, they made it look like it was more of like a grin. You just imagine the most awful, gory looking thing imaginable is what this is. And then in the second movie, particularly, almost a goofy looking smile like that. And you're just thinking, the brain doesn't know which way to go, you know? So awful. And yet, just looking at you smiling, the brain doesn't know what to do with it. And so it's like, imagine if you were some crazy person, you saw something like that, you would be literally scared to death if that were in your mind and it was 100% real, and like nobody else could see it. That it's extremely clever to me, the way they actually made the demon thing look. And I just wanted to say it because that was something else. That was something else. Okay, I covered that. What else did I want to say? I think I just wanted to get into my disappointment, and it's my own fault, not even this movie's fault. These are horror movies, so it is what it is. I guess what I wanted was, again, an ending where there's some kind of hope. Ain't gonna happen. And it's just, and with that, the two different characters, how Rose in the first movie, there's that one scene toward the end when it's showing her as a little girl, and when her mother is just so strung out, literally from she's OD'd, she's in the process of dying, and they're trying to show that. But when she says for call for help, and when the young Rose, 10 years old, I guess, it's a good acting job by this little girl. The way she's like, when she shook her head, I was just thinking to myself, you just pick up a phone and call 911, if nothing else. Like, there was something in there that, in my mind, I guess they meant to do this. The director, the writer. Let me get his name right again. Um, does Parker Finn going to be saying his name in the future if they make a Smile 3, which they will, but I don't know if I'm going to go see it. And I'll tell you why for the end. I know I've already said it multiple times in my other reviews of these two movies, but it's like, come on, man, throw me a bone here. It's like he deliberately tainted or skewed. I don't know what the right word is. Her character, in as much as there was something she could have done. It's not just the trauma of a little girl losing her mother in such a tragic way, largely the mother's fault because of the drugs. That it's not somebody else doing it to her. It's something that she was addicted to, something that she did to herself. And yet, when they have the young Rose shake her head like that, that's something that she could have done to help her mother. And I'm thinking to myself as I'm watching it, I'm like, something just changed here. But she was still so remorseful. And they do something in as much as she actually overpowers the entity when it was on her. It hadn't showed its true form yet, when it had grown up to giant proportions or whatever. That was so creepy. Stuff like that. Good job, movie maker, Parker. But it's like when it was on fire and then she ran out of the house, she shut the door, and the house, the old house of her family that would look so horrible, looked like something out of a scary video game. Um, that look of, cry of fear. I haven't played the Silent Hill games, like that kind of rusted out look of a house. So awful, scary. It's like she had overcome, There was this moment of hope. You never see anything like that in Smile 2, of the demon having caught fire and any kind of like crying, like, oh, like it's been whipped, it's been resisted or whatever, it's been escaped from. The host has gotten away. And then, like the last 10 minutes of Smile is all a hallucination. And with Joel, it was like, I'll stay with you. I'll stay with you forever. And then he does a smile thing. You're freaking out. You're freaking out as you're watching this movie. The last 10 minutes of it. And then it's like, it's mean to me. It's mean to the viewer because you're thinking, what is this all innate of? How can she escape? She literally faced her demon. She went back to the house. She embraced these memories that she had about her mother. What more could she do at that point? And then by then the demon had just completely devoured up her mind and really fed off of the negativity, or however you want to say it, that they had in that exposition monologue, whatever, from the second movie. And again, that character in the second movie, Smile 2, was he even real? I don't think he was even real. Peter Jacobson played the character Morris. Morris, you don't even exist. So that was my complaint about the first movie. It's like, okay, Rose died. She killed herself in front of Joel. People in the comments are like, Joel felt bad about not doing more to save Rose, and that's part of the guilt he had in the second movie. But I'm thinking to myself, what more could this man do? Where are you guys coming from who say, is it at the very end where he's not sure what he's even seeing? He knows she's freaking out when she covers herself in the kerosene with a smile and she lights herself up. It's like, is that all they're talking about? Because this man who had been broken up with this woman could have just said, later, ho, we're done. He didn't have to go check on her. He still had feelings for the character. Joel still had feelings. He cared about Rose. He, when she pressed him, he helped her do research on past suicide victims of, and they put it together that this is something that's happened. This suicide happens, and then this suicide, the witness of the suicide then commits suicide. Up to 20 cases. He's the one who found that out for her and stuff. He drove her to the nut house to speak with the only man they knew of who had gotten away from the curse. Come on, is it? I want to get his name right. They don't have him on here. I want to say Rob Morgan played Robert Talley, but he might have been the. I can't see him. He might have been the detective with Joel at the beginning of the movie. No, he was the guy. Great freak out scene by him in that hospital. Like, you have it? Why did you come in? He was great. That guy was great. And Dr. Madeline Northcott, played by Robin Wager, she was great. Caitlin Stacy, who played Laura Weaver, who the whole thing is based off of. And I'm skipping the name here. Is it Heather? Heather Hasn't Slept or something like that. I'm getting her name wrong. But the short film that this whole franchise was inspired from. They were well directed. I gotta give props to Mr. Parker Finn on that, because it's like this was a relentless ride. Everyone was so focused from sequence to sequence, and especially in Smile 2, which continues my complaint about the hallucination thing. It's mean to me, the viewing audience, that they doubled down so much in the second movie with the hallucination thing. Over half of this movie is a hallucination. And you remember those intermittent, those little spurts of sequences where it's all the dance choreography stuff with Sky and her dancing crew, because she's got on her comeback tour as a singer, a pop singer. And thinking about it now, it's like that's the only thing that was really real toward the middle of the film and onward. Because at the end, she is revealed out of the thing, which was part of the dance choreography, the big clam looking thing or whatever that cage was that opens up, and then she comes out of it. She's going to perform before this arena a pavilion of tens of thousands of people. Um, I lost my place. Um, but then again, even one of those was just a transitional thing when all of a sudden she had a hallucination about her broken leg from the horrible car accident and the way she had a compound fracture, bones sticking out with the blood and gore. It's like, oh, you're almost in pain yourself looking at that. She's like, who tripped me? Who tripped me? Because it was in the dark, a darkened room as they were doing that with the laser lights going everywhere and junk. But it was all a hallucination. And this is my big complaint about Smile 2. It's like you can't really complain because it is what it is. These movies are like a ride at a theme park. You go on them and you get thrilled, and then it's over. And my complaint is that it's not really what I really, really want. I want a story that I want to know how to beat the entity apart from. What can I say? You're not going to get a happy ending, David. No, 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 no. Happy's not what it's about. It's about some kind of peace. Even if they die, peace for the characters who especially had shown remorse. Rose had shown remorse, but they went so hardcore with Sky's story. When you finally get into the last things going on in her mind and that the entity is feeding off of the whole time about the car accident, how utterly obnoxious she was as a drunk, and Paul Hudson, played by Ray Nicholson, he had, I want to give the creepiest smile. I've already said this, I'm saying it again, to Caitlin Stasey, the original actress. You know, before I move on, I'm giving her props again. In the first movie, when she comes in and she's already freaking out, she's in the last stages of it. And when Rose is talking to her like a psychologist or whatever, a doctor of the brain, of the noggin, has to quell quell the fears and try and calm people who are experiencing hallucinations and stuff. I know it seems real. The expression on Laura Weaver, on Caitlin, the actress, on Caitlin's face when she realizes she's just patronizing me. She doesn't actually believe. She doesn't understand what's going on. When she says you're not listening, and she didn't really cry, but almost she got close enough. It was like I felt for her. You know, I felt horrible for her when she said, I'm going to die, and no one believes me, and no one understands. The voice, it speaks to me. It says, today's the day that I'm going to. And she couldn't get the word out. And then it's like it was already there. She was looking around, and then all of a sudden she saw it. You don't see it, of course, in the movie, but the way it plays out, Rosie looking around all weird in the room, like, what is she seeing? What's going on? I just wanted to say that. Caitlin Stasey as Laura Weaver. That was something else. I felt terrible for like 2 or 3 seconds when that was happening to her. It's like, imagine being in that situation, being so filled with dread, and nobody, and it's real. You know it's real, but nobody believes you. It's like, oh man. Let me keep going. Smile 2. We've made it to Smile 2 as far as these complaints and stuff. And praise also, because these movies are an experience. They were an experience to me, not just a movie I watched. Um, you know what? Let me go ahead and do this one while I'm thinking about it. I talked about the opening scene with Joel. Also, in my new top 10 things in my mind of the most intense things I've ever seen in a movie, the sequence where Sky is laying there in bed with the IV, and she gets into it with her and her mom, and you're thinking to yourself, is her mother for real? Is Elizabeth Riley for real? She's still trying to push Sky to be up and at him and able to perform like a dancing monkey and sing a song for who knows who, and for Darius, played by Raul Castillo, actually perform for people while she's here with bruises on her head and face, and her mother saying, "Oh, we'll cover that part of your part of your hair up," and she's got the needle in her, the IV, and you're just thinking, this is not reasonable, and you feel for Sky at that moment. It's like, I can't perform tomorrow. And when she gets into it about her mother, with her mother, about how her mother is treating her and everything, it's like when she says, "I wish you could understand what it's like to live inside my head." The smile, the creepy smile that Elizabeth Riley puts on, played by Rosemary DeWitt. That thing she did with her face, because everybody's face is different. That thing that she did, and when the demon voice cranks up, I jumped in the theater. I wasn't. It was like an abrupt thing the way they did the sound, and then when Sky starts freaking out in the bed, the whole scene of her thinking that her mother killed herself in front of her, the demon messing with her, and then when she stopped at the door with the glass in her hand, the whole thing of her, the whole sequence of her thinking she had just stabbed her mother up and killed her with the broken glass. The whole sequence of her thinking she killed her mother was like, it like broke my brain for a minute. I was thinking, I couldn't think about anything else. This movie completely sucked me in the way that very, very few movies really can. Even movies that you might see at the theater. It's like, and that is a unique quality that these two movies have right there. That is in the top 10 for me of the most intense things I've ever seen in a movie. Scary, traumatic, whatever. Uh, I do, and I just wanted to say it again. That's all. So props to Rosemary DeWitt's portrayal of Elizabeth Riley, big time. But now let me go back to complaining about some stuff. It's like there's no escape from the entity because you don't know what's what. The entity, I guess, was actually just screwing with her in the bar when he's given the dialogue, the exposition or whatever about. By the time it's too late, you won't know all the different ways the entity has been manipulating you and feeding off the negativity in your brain. It's like he wasn't real. It was literally all a hallucination. And at the end of this movie, when she comes out of that thing, having been in the deep, dark, dank Pizza Hut abandoned freezer with that horrible nightmare going on in her brain and more. So I have to go get something. And the way he just heads out the door. And then she opens up in that thing and she realizes that her mother's standing there and she not only didn't kill her, she is still alive. She wasn't dead. She didn't kill her. She's still alive. Smile, smile. You're performing for all those people. I was like, what? What? This movie, because depending on how closely you're paying attention, then your brain can do some backtracking math. You're thinking, that happened like 20, 30 minutes ago, didn't it? She got out of the hospital. She she's running away. She grabbed the security officer's gun. She has the crazy thing in the car, the hell behind the wheel sequence with her friend Gemma, played by Dylan Galula, and the whole thing with the texting of her friend never called her in those 3 days. All that was a hallucination. When she was in the bed with her, and her eyes became the headlights of a big truck coming her way, and all that never happened. And in that moment, just it's all running together now, and it's a big convoluted mess. Is the thing, and nobody's going to understand the way I'm complaining about this because you can't put the junk back together again. Because there's a scene in this movie where it's when Dylan, it's when I'm going to say Gemma. I'm not sure if it's Gemma or her friend, Gemma, played by Dylan D- Dylan? Yeah, sounds like a guy's name. Whatever. Gemma. That's the way it's spelled. Gemma. When she asked her, "Would you stay with me tonight? I don't want to be alone." And she's kind of reluctant at first, but when she says, "I'll stay with you. I'll stay with you tonight," because she had invited her in her apartment, she hallucinated the guy. Get this. Sky had to have hallucinated. First, she must have hallucinated that the Asian looking fellow was getting too close for comfort, and I think you and I would be so good together. With he's trying to get the autograph, and then he's like groping her, and she's screaming, and they take him away. I love you, Sky. I love you, Sky. He's freaking out. He's freaking everybody else out. And he's screaming like a lunatic. When she imagined him at the end of her dark hallway, because Sky, along with all these crazy people, have to keep it so poorly lit in their fancy apartments that they got this all this money, they can't afford any lights, they can't afford electricity through the night, so you can actually see what's going on. Side point: she imagined him in her head, and then she imagined him attacking her, and she invented him in her mind, and then she envisioned him attacking her, and that's when Gemma showed up. And she told her all about what happened, and they kind of skipped that part. And there's this moment where when she agrees to stay with her for the night, the music changed and it became a softer, more comforting thing. And the same way, the camera work of this movie, where it's always doing the demonic inversion thing, where you see the city upside down and ooh, you're getting dizzy, you're losing your mind. That moment, it's like she's not seeing the city upside down. That's a holdover from the first movie. It's you, the viewer. And so the movie tricks you at this part because it tricked me. You see the outside of her apartment. You're almost like seeing what the entity would be seeing as far as this thing that's hovering near her and wanting to get closer and closer to her and get inside of her, all the way inside of her, and completely take over her mind. This part where her friend, her good friend, who she had done wrong after she had her car accident and had blown up on her and called her all kind of bad names. So whatever happened between them, hadn't seen her in a year. When she comes to her and she agrees, "I'll stay with you for the night," and the music gets softer, you see this scene outside of her apartment where the music is softened up and the camera kind of leaves the apartment outside the window and it gets farther away from it, almost like the entity has to back off because of this good thing, this comforting thing that's happened in Sky's life. But then the next scene is her in the bed and she's saying, "I know I'm messed up." And it's one of the remorseful scenes where she actually regrets her past and what she did. It's because you're a horrible person. That scene where she's looking over at her friend and freaking out because she's just smiling at her in the bed and it's so creepy. Um, they went so hardcore with this movie. I think I've gone over an hour. It's 53 minutes. I can't go over an hour with this. Let me pick up the pace here. It was so much more horrible than the first movie with the car accident and her crying that way and her looking over and seeing uh, Paul Hudson, Paul's face all mangled and looking at her like with a dirty look almost. I've only seen the movie once in the theater, but I remember his eyes like were open and looking at the camera, like looking directly at Scott. That's the most horrible thing, man. It was just horrible. And then later on, you see how she had acted in the lead up to that, yanking the wheel when he's acting like a piece of garbage too, because he's completely fed up with whatever she's been tormenting him in his life with the drugs that they're both on. It's like they're both pieces of garbage, but she caused this accident which killed him, and it's like it's just such a hardcore movie because she wants she wants to be free of the entity, of course. She wants to be free of her guilt from the past. But it's like she's not like completely, she's not completely innocent, like completely penitent of this stuff. At least she reached out to her friend. She has that going for her. And yeah, I'm picking apart the character now. Like, what are you saying, David? People deserve to die. It's like, no, that's the whole point. You don't want to see the people die. You don't want to see them get hurt. You want to see them overcome. But it's like something was fixed in the beginning of this when Lewis killed herself in front of her in his apartment, and that whole thing was scary too. With his freak out scene, he did a good job. Lewis, played by Lucas Gage, with the sword. He had the sword to her throat. He's freaking out and he's paranoid. He's got to keep it all dark in his place too, because I guess they're all just darkness nuts. They can't afford to keep the lights on at night when it's dark. That was just horrible the way he killed himself with that weight. When she didn't call the cops, when she started to, but then didn't, I thought to myself, no, no, you can't roll that way, Sky. You can't. She's afraid of being caught. She's afraid of her comeback tour being ruined because she was caught up in the death of a drug dealer. They're going to put two and two together, like she's back on the sauce or the pills, or even though it was just for her back pain or whatever. I'll give it that. It's like she's afraid of how it's going to look, and she's all about this image because she has to be, because that's what her life is, and that's what her mother apparently is pushing her all the time to be. It's like when she didn't call, even though it was dead, even though she didn't call for help, just like Rose didn't call for help when she should have called for help to help me with this problem. Somebody else who's outside of this, call the police, call somebody. When she didn't call 911, I was there thinking, this ain't going to be good. This is going to catch up to her real quick. And then it's crazy. She Googled, is there DNA in vomit? She's looking on Google. That's the kind of thing I would end up Googling, just random. Um, oh, and that's another creepy moment when she said, "Hey, Lewis, long time no see. Can I come over maybe and maybe get some whatever?" I caught it in the theater, man. When that text showed up as like sure or whatever, and a great big smile emoji, I shuddered right then in the theater. Like, oh, that is that is so wrong. Because this demon man, this thing is unreal. It's brutal. It really is. These are some a little bit of gore, war movies, obviously, all kind of death happening, apocalyptic things. 2012, end of the world movies, lots of death, lots of destruction. Terrifier 3, which I'm never going to watch. Gore out the yin yang. But these two movies are two of the most brutal, especially Smile 2, the most brutal stories I think I've ever seen. The way the entity works. Okay, let me get back to it. She should have called for help. She didn't. That speaks to her character and the struggle she has with herself. She's not a decent person at all. She was willing to call out for her friend. Would you come talk to me? I need to see you. I need to see somebody. That's good. And then at the end, this occurred to me right as I was speaking about it a few minutes ago about Morris. The way Morris, who was you realize in about 2 more minutes, is just a hallucination that the entity was projecting into her mind. He doesn't even exist. It was another remorse moment. And this speaks well of Sky. She's on this table in her mind, that cold freezer table in this almost completely dark room. And Morris asked her a question. What did he ask her? What made you change your mind? Because he had The entity had already said, I think we can fix this. We'll stop your heart. She's like, what? I can't do this, and you're insane. No, this is your only chance of beating this thing, of making it, because apparently we are going to try and stop her heart. If her brain shut down long enough, the entity would have no source but to like leave and be caught up in no host available status. Uh, it is so creepy. The more I think about that now, that is that. Oh, I only thought this junk was brutal and sick and evil. Morris isn't real. It's just the entity. He asked her, if you don't mind me asking, what did he ask her? He asked her, what made you change your mind and come back? And right before he says, well, I need to go get something. I'll be right back. He just kind of disappears out the door that locks automatically if you accidentally shut it. He didn't shut it. He's going to come right back. At least that's what he said, the entity. But when he asked that, man, now that I think about it, it's like it's the entity asking. Oh, can you imagine some murderer, some sicko, asking their victim who they know they're going to kill and end their life in murder, the unjust killing of a person, murder? What made you change your mind about so and so? Just for the weirdo pleasure of getting a little bit more information out of somebody? Oh man. Man, what made you change your mind? And it's one of her remorse moments where she's lying on that table and she's like, I forget what all she said, but it was just about how she knows she's done wrong, she's hurt people, and she doesn't want to hurt anybody else. And then after she has the struggle with the horrible nightmare eyes thing, which is like a bad reflection of her own self, and that's so sick, and she wakes up, break a leg, this isn't real. Oh, when she comes out of that thing, and of course the movie ends that way with I wonder if that's why Mr. Parker chose to switch it up in the first movie. The entity was disguised as her mother, the source of her great regret, Rose's great regret. And then in Smile 2 with Sky, she knows she is the source of her great sorrows and regrets, how she has hurt people. So I guess that's why it's her own reflection of her own self that the horrible CGI monstrosity entity comes out of and then goes into the real her and has completely taken her over. I guess the more I think I've actually thought about this, I guess I actually understand it on my own. Because people, I'm sure people got 1,000 theories about these movies and different interpretations, but I'm just thinking, was there no redemption? Is there nothing that can be done? Because really, I'm kind of liking I've gone over an hour. Look at that, an hour and 3 minutes. Oh, I'm kind of liking my idea about how Joel could have not been hit by a truck. He could have got with Lewis, and they could have gone on a camping trip somewhere to try. Because if there's more than one person doing this, maybe they could have successfully taken out some more gangbangers or something, some murderers, maybe some cartel guys. Who knows? And push the entity on them. But no, it's another brutal story. The more I think about it, the more brutal it becomes. About a documentary, and that's what these movies are. It's a documentary about a week in the life of the trauma entity. Here's how it goes from one host to another. Here are the different phases that with the few days that the host has left, and then the person dies horribly, and the curse goes on to the witness of a murder or suicide. Anyways, I now have closure. And I got to repeat what I said earlier. Now that I've finally gotten all these gripes, complaints, all these things out of my system, I do believe it's just another horror movie because it's always going to have a downbeat ending. They have, I think they've solidified that now. If they make a Smile 3, which they will, because these movies have done great money at the movie theater. They made a lot of money, done very successfully. Smile 3 isn't going to be some multiple host deal. I just don't believe it is. I don't believe it's going to be a nearing a pandemic or a nearing a pandemic thing, because the way Sky dies at the end, and they actually show the whole crowd. It's like they're taunting you almost, like, look at all these traumatized people. And it's no mistake that as Sky was kind of like halfway crying and halfway comatose with the mental fatigue she had gone through with realizing she's now performing, she's not in some freezer somewhere locked up with a devil. Her mother is alive and it's time to perform. And then when she kills herself with the stupid microphone thing, awful looking image, and the smile at the end as she's laying there, oh man. That a lot of these people are going to be undergoing the trauma entity curse, that it was passed off to who knows how many people. And I didn't realize how derivative this idea in the Smile franchise is, that I never get, like I said, I haven't watched a lot of horror movies. I've never watched The Ring or whatever, but apparently just by watching that, the person was also cursed or something like that. So it's not the first time this kind of thing has been done. But as far as it being like a singular, like, demonic entity thing, maybe that is what's unique about it. I gotta go back. I gotta watch the Ring now. I gotta watch these movies to see just how similar these pass it on trauma things are in these particular horror films. But it's like, if there's a Smile 3, and there will be, I've already said it, and this will be the last time I say it. If it's just another one person being tormented, I'm not gonna watch it. I'm just not gonna watch it at the theater. I won't bother with it. But if they come up with a trailer where it's like there are multiple people, and it's like this is becoming like they got like a crisis situation in that city, like there's unusual disturbances of the nut house is overflowing with people talking about demons and stuff. Okay, that would be interesting. That would mean they're actually following their logical. It would mean that they're actually continuing on from the ending of the second movie, the way they continued on perfectly from the end of the first movie to the second movie. I would watch that for sure. And I'm hoping this is just a thing with me. I'm hoping that the guy, Cal Penn, who played Dr. Morgan Desai, I was kind of thinking, it'd be great to go back, connect the third film and the first film, go back to his hospital and have him try and figure out what's going on through his former association with Rose. Then again, she didn't really lay it on him about what she was going through. She just tried to deal with it on her own. But to see him again in a hospital setting, trying to figure out what in the world's going on with all these people who are on the verge of becoming homicidal killers in order to rid themselves of the entity, that would probably be a really memorable and fun movie. But it's just a thought, just an idea, and they probably won't do it. But yeah, what more can I say? I'm getting it all out. I'm getting it all out in this video. Rose and Sky, particularly Sky, were filled with regrets over something that they had done, especially Sky. And yet it was because the entity was getting that out of them and making them focus on it and feeding parasitically on it in their minds and amplifying it to a fevered pitch until they couldn't stand it. They were losing their minds because of the curse. And they both died. They just die at the end. The end. So it's just another horror movie. But at least I'm learning. I'm learning from these movies about unique styles, and it's these two particular films was quite a, it was, especially number two, was quite a thrill. Quite a thrill. Like I said, I've watched Nosferatu the other night, and even though it was a beautifully done movie and everything, uh, it didn't it didn't scare me in the way that the Smile movies did. At least not in the same way, I guess you could say. Anyways, hour and 10 minutes. I gotta shut up. I gotta end this. I now have closure on the Smile movies, and thank you so much for watching, folks. Especially if you watched or listened to all hour and 11 minutes of this. Thank you so much. That's way more attention than I deserve. And I'll see you in the next video. Take care.